I'm with Professor Eyal Zisser from the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern Studies, who's an expert on Iran. Now, Professor Eyal, the president of Iran has just died in a helicopter crash, Ibrahim Raisi. Who was he and what kind of leader was he?
Well, people in Iran call him the butcher
Mm.
because he was the prosecutor of Iran, the general prosecutor in the early 80s, early days of the Islamic Revolution. And he was responsible for the execution of around 30,000 people, enemies of the regime, loyals of the previous regime or the regime of the Shah. So this is clearly a man with blood on his hands. Nevertheless, he was considered as loyal to the system, to the regime, very radical, and that's why he not only been elected as president, but was mentioned as a possible successor to the supreme leader, who is the really important man in Iran, to the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei.
Do you think he will be missed in Iran?
Well, what we see is that, the public, the Iranian public, well, I wouldn't say happy, but there is very little sorrow because of his reputation, because of his extremism, because he was considered as, yeah, so that's the sort of thing
Mm.
we
How,
feel now in Iran.
how will his death affect Iran? Will there be a big power play now?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that the supreme leader is the real leader of Iran. He's the one who decides on the main issues. The president is more of some sort of a director general who gets instruction. The policy is being dictated to him and he fulfilled the mission. So he was not the one who took decisions on, for example, the nuclear question of the tension and even the conflict with the United States, with Israel. He was not the one. The decision was taken by the supreme leader. So it's not really important who is the president of Iran. It's the supreme leader, it's the system, the security agencies, the Revolutionary Guard. Probably they will find someone else to replace him. And still, he was the president. As far as the economy is concerned, he's the one in charge. And once again, he was mentioned as a possible successor. So he was someone in Iran, but this kind of regime it's not a regime that is built on the personality of one man, like in some dictatorships. So I guess that will overcome the loss of Raisi.
Will they elect a new president? And are the elections fair?
Well, first of all, when a president is, like in our case, cannot function, the vice president is fulfill his place for 50 days. And then there should be new election. Now, the elections, the catch here is that in order to run in the election, your candidacy must be approved by actually Khamenei himself, the supreme leader, through his aides, through what is called the Council of the Specialists. This is a special body that monitor the conduct of the regime in Iran under Khamenei. So you can't run if you are not loyal, if you are not being trusted by the regime, if you are not part of the regime, part of them, one of them. And then after the list of candidates is being approved, there are elections. And what we saw in several campaigns in the past was that when the less radical, the more soft, the more so-called moderate was leading, there were cases where the regime intervened and actually changed the results.
Now, the narrative is that his helicopter came down in bad weather. Do you believe that's correct? Or are we now starting to get into conspiracy theory that maybe Iran assassinated him or even Israel assassinated him? Do you believe this is correct, that it was just bad weather?
I doubt it very much. From time to time, it's not only bad weather, it's the equipment, the system, the level of, since the rise, the emergence of the rise to power of the Ayatollahs in Tehran, and relations with the West were cut, and there was embargo. So, and they were not able to buy new systems, new equipments, new aircrafts. Maintenance is very difficult. They rely to a certain extent on the Russians. So it's very poor. It can be
Mm.
understood why the combination of both weather and poor maintenance led to this accident. I doubt it very much whether this was, the Americans, the Israelis. He was not as important as, Soleimani was, who was assassinated by the Americans. And everybody knows that there will be no real change. So why to bother and assassinate him?
How does his death affect Israel? Does his death affect Israel?
I don't think that it affects Israel. It will affect Israel. I mean, once again, he was not the one who took the decision. So, and he will be replaced by someone else. So it will be the same system, same
Is Israel
policy, the same. Yeah.
is Israel happy that he's gone? Iran just targeted Israel recently.
I think that nobody is sorry or nobody is missing him, but at the same time, people do understand that it was not about him and there will be no real change as a result of his death.
How powerful is Iran in the region? And do other Arab countries fear Iran?
Yes, clearly, most Arab countries, mainly the Gulf states, fear Iran. Let me remind you that, for example, the Emirates and the Saudis were attacked by Iran and by the Houthis years before they start attacking Israel. Several years ago, the Iranians, the Houthi, launched rockets and drones against targets in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates. So there is the constant fear from Iran. And we saw that despite the conflict in Gaza and the terrible war between Israel and Palestinian and Hamas, most Arab countries maintain their relations and security coordination with Israel.
Of course, Iran is actually technically, in one sense, fighting Israel today through its proxies, through Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, aren't they?
Yes, but they are careful not to do it, directly. There was one exception, and we noticed that both sides, both the Israelis and the Iranian, prefer not to get to a direct conflict. It's much easier for everyone to say, well, it's Hezbollah, it's not Iran.
Is Iran a danger to the world?
I think that, well, to the world, well, they develop missiles that can hit not only Israel, but in the long run also London. So why do they need it? It's a threat to the stability of the region. That's how people in the region view Iran. As for the entire world, I think that the world will be much safer if Iran can contain.
Is Iran close to having a nuclear weapon? And does Israel need to deal with that?
They are close. I don't know, if it will take them another year, another half a year, but they are very close. And there is also the decision to do it because maybe they prefer to have the ability, but not to become nuclear because it can anger the United States. It can force the United States to take action. So this sort of thing. So I do believe that they might not become nuclear, but will have the abilities. So they are close. That's what all experts say.
Does the US understand how dangerous Iran is to the Middle East? Or are they
Yes.
just playing politics all the time?
Yes, I do think that the Americans do understand, but of course the question is what to do about it. What to do
Mm.
about it. And the Americans prefer to avoid escalation and to avoid tension and even conflict with the Iranians. And Trump tried to oppose them sharply, harshly. Biden is trying, like Obama, to reach some sort of a deal. So there is understanding how dangerous Iran is, but as what to do about it, that's a big question.
Chatting and talking, does that really work? Or are they just still going to violate the deal anyways and get closer and closer to that nuclear weapon? Does Israel actually need to go in and deal with Iran? Because that, striking Iran and its nuclear facilities, that will deal with it once and for all. Or will that just bring the whole Middle East into bigger conflict?
Yes, I think that they, as I mentioned before, prefer a deal, believing that that's the best way to deal with the threat. I mean, first of all, to delay the moment of truth. Each president want to delay, transfer this file to the next president. And maybe there are some who believe that, well, Iran has its own maybe it's better to speak with Iran, even that it's a dangerous enemy, and that's the best way to avoid escalation.
Is Iran listening, or are they just going to do what they want to do?
They are under severe economic pressure, and I think, yes, they are ready to cooperate, but whether it will help in the long run, I doubt it very much.
Do you see the Iranian people actually coming and overthrowing their government like what happened in the Arab Spring?
It will happen. It will happen, no doubt about it. But when, God knows. I mean, it can take years. Surely, I mean, this will happen one day, taking into consideration, looking back at the history of Iran and how unpopular this regime is. But it's mere speculation to try and figure out when it will come next year, 2 years from today, 50 years from today, God knows.
As an Israeli, what is your hope for Iran?
Well, I do hope that there will be regime change in Iran, and Iran will be different, more open, first of all, for the Iranians, for the Iranian women, for the Iranian youth, and also for the Iranian neighbors. A different Iran can play much positive role in the region.
Well, Professor Eyal, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you.